All right, let's talk Florida State Seminoles football. We're getting an exciting time. Training camp is in full swings. We're seeing what every college football team is going to look like. And we got some great news for you FSU fans. There's a breakout star emerging at a key position. I'm Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, so we know the Florida State Seminoles. They've got a few question marks, mainly quarterback. How is DJ Uiagalelei going to emerge as the guy going forward? But we know this is one of the best teams in college football. They're stacked with transfers. They're stacked with freshmen coming in. But there's some veteran guys starting to make a name for themselves as well, really impressing all the right people. Let's get into this latest report highlighting one in particular. This is from Tallahassee.com. Senior defensive back Kevin Knowles continued his strong run of practices, grabbing 2 interceptions and jarring a ball loose in coverage drills. Knowles has had 3 interceptions and multiple pass breakups in the last 2 practices. FSU head coach Mike Norvell singled out Knowles as one player who impressed him after the first scrimmage of the fall, and Knowles has continued to impress since. His performance drew praise from both Norvell and defensive coordinator Adam Fuller. I think that Kevin is somebody that has executed at a high level lately, Fuller said. He's gotten his hand on a lot of footballs. All right, so look, we know this is a talented team. When you add breakout stars, guys that were kind of under the radar, becoming even better players, that's just more great news for the Seminoles. And I'm sure you FSU fans are excited by this. Miles, I'm curious what your thoughts are. But first, Florida State fans, in the comment section below, we're talking safeties today. So I'm going to ask you guys, who is your favorite Florida State Seminoles safety of all time? A couple of interesting names that could potentially be on the list, but I'm really curious what you guys have to say on this. It's kind of an interesting topic. Can go back a really long time to find some good ones, but you can only pick one. Give us your favorite Florida State Seminole safety of all time and put them in the comment section below. But Miles, what are your thoughts on this latest news out of FSU?
Yeah, Nick, I think this is some really interesting news for FSU, especially when we talk about someone who's breaking out finally. You heard it in the beginning of the article. It's a senior. It's a guy who's been around the block for a long time. This is a guy who really hasn't gotten his chance yet. And how often does that happen? Someone gets buried on the depth chart of an uber talented team like FSU. They're bringing in stars constantly. You kind of lose track of guys like this down the line. And he came to FSU early, was recruited by this FSU team. So he's got to be pretty good. They don't go out and recruit bad players. I think it's really interesting. He's finally getting his time to shine. I think this is kind of a good break from the norm. We always hear about young guys coming in. We always hear about, transfers coming in and doing really good. It's nice to hear that these guys are sitting on the roster, they're developing, and sometimes you hear them, they come in, they don't do anything their first year, and then that's all you hear from them. People think those guys are bust. They're never going to do anything again. Well, that's not true because they're always working, they're always growing, and they are always learning more and more. And as we go through that cycle, these guys get better. And it just so happens if you are a bust or you don't do a lot that first year, you might not get another chance. It doesn't mean that you haven't gotten better. But in Knowles' plays, I'm glad to see he did get another chance, and it seems like he's doing very good so far, and coaches are starting to know. So for me, it's kind of like, a come from behind story, an underdog story of a guy who came in, didn't really get a chance to start, didn't show too much early on, grew, and now finally as a senior, he's getting his time to shine. I think this is going to be a really big playmaker for Florida State going forward.
Here's the thing that I think could really jump out about this, and I had to double check the numbers to make sure I had it right. So Mike Norvell comes to Florida State in 2020. Kevin Knowles follows him shortly thereafter. His first year at Florida State is 2021. He gets buried on the depth chart, right? So at that point in today's day and age, college football, what happens? Transfer immediately, not even a second thought. You'll lose him. He's gone. He's going somewhere else. But I think it speaks to the culture Norvell was putting in place way back in 2020 about player development, right? About building up a culture of people wanting to buy in and try and win titles and win a lot of football games, win ACC championships, win national championships. And it's clear from guys like Kevin Knowles sticking around that culture really set in. And the big flashy names in the transfer portal and the 5 stars and the recruits, that's incredibly important. That's undeniable. But I think it's sort of these culture guys, these kind of mid-tier guys that hang around, that believe, that buy in, that get the young guys to stay in line, that get guys that would potentially transfer out. Like how many guys, I wonder, over the past few years has Kevin Knowles told, hey man, don't leave Tallahassee. I'm sticking it out. I'm not going anywhere, and I'm going to get a chance to compete this year. You need to stick it out too. When you have that culture, when you have that environment, a lot of good things can happen. That was kind of one of the secret under the radar successes, I think, of Nick Saban, right? People forget, as good as Alabama was recruiting for so long, they had a lot of guys that would like never play for a year or two, and then they'd show up and they just dominate the SEC, right? Because it's like, who is this guy? He's a junior and he's running for 1,500 yards. It's like, well, he was a good player buried in the depth chart, and he was willing to stick around and develop. And that was a credit to Saban's culture. We are seeing the same exact thing from Norvell here in Florida State. I think that's a great predictor of long-term high-level success, because anybody can get, well, not anybody, but a few really top programs can get a really great recruiting class and a really great transfer class and have just a magical run. TCU played in a national championship game a couple of years ago, right? I mean, it's just a magical run. Things happen. But long-term sustained success is built, number one, on recruiting top talent, bringing that in the building, but number two, and just as importantly, developing and retaining the top talent. We know Florida State can recruit. We know Norvell can recruit. Now we are seeing undeniable proof that he can develop and retain talent as well. I think this is a great sign for Florida State, and I'm really excited to see Kevin Knowles doing a lot of great things, and the coaches are impressed by him. I think this is a great indicator for Florida State as we get closer to the regular season.